Hong Kong is a city like no other. It's where the East meets the West, where skyscrapers rise above ancient traditions, and where history is alive in every corner. But what made Hong Kong the city it is today? What forces molded its identity? And how does its past continue to shape its present and future? Greetings, my fellow time travelers. I am Phileas Kronos, your guide through the winding corridors of history. Today, before we set off on another grand adventure, I want to take a moment to speak directly to you, our incredible community of explorers. First and foremost, thank you for your continued support, enthusiasm, and, most importantly, your constructive feedback on our recent journeys. It is your insights and thoughtful critiques that shape the direction of Timeless Tales and make it a better experience for everyone. One comment in particular caught my attention, a piece of wisdom shared by Hauke. Hauke, you pointed out that I sometimes rush through my narration, leaving little room for the weight of history to truly settle in. You also mentioned that my AI-crafted voice could feel a bit too robotic at times. Your observation struck a chord with me, and I want to express my gratitude for your honesty and for challenging me to improve. Hauke, and all of you who share your thoughts, I hear you. Starting today, I'll strive to slow down, to let the stories breathe, and to bring more depth and nuance to each moment. After all, history is not a race. It's a journey, one that deserves every bit of time and care we can give it. So, with your guidance as my compass, let us embark on today's adventure with fresh inspiration and renewed purpose. Together, we'll delve into the story of Hong Kong, a tale of resilience, transformation, and cultural fusion that has shaped a city like no other. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your feedback, and thank you for joining me in making history come alive. Now, shall we begin? Welcome to Timeless Tales, where the stories of our world's past come alive. I'm Phileas Kronos, and today, we embark on a journey to uncover the extraordinary history of Hong Kong, a city that embodies resilience, transformation, and cultural fusion. This story isn't just about the rise of a city, it's about the people who shaped it, their struggles, triumphs, and the enduring spirit that defines Hong Kong to this day. Over the course of this journey, we will uncover the roots of this incredible place, tracing its evolution through time and exploring the forces that continue to shape its destiny. Prepare for a deep dive into history, from its earliest settlements, through the struggles of the Opium Wars, into the transformative colonial era, the devastating trials of World War II, and its modern-day challenges under Chinese sovereignty. Along the way, we'll also celebrate the cultural icons, like Bruce Lee, who helped put Hong Kong on the global map. This is not just a history lesson, it's a reflection on resilience, identity, and the interplay of power and culture. Let's begin. Long before it became a global hub, Hong Kong was a modest settlement. Archaeological discoveries reveal human activity dating back over 30,000 years. Over time, the area developed into a collection of fishing villages, salt farms, and trade ports, benefiting from its strategic location along the Pearl River Delta. During the Tang and Song dynasties, Hong Kong's waters teemed with merchants and traders, linking it to the vast trade networks of China and beyond. Yet, it wasn't until the Ming and Qing dynasties that Hong Kong began to take on the characteristics of a bustling port town. To fully understand the origins of Hong Kong's colonial era, we must delve into one of the darkest chapters of global trade, the Opium Triangle trade. By the late 18th century, Britain was heavily reliant on Chinese goods, such as tea, porcelain, and silk. These commodities were highly sought after in Europe, but the Qing dynasty's strict trade policies meant that foreign merchants could only trade through the port of Canton, modern-day Guangzhou, and had to pay in silver. This created a significant trade imbalance, draining Britain's silver reserves. To address this issue, the British East India Company developed a controversial solution. From their colonies in India, they began cultivating opium on a massive scale. This opium was then smuggled into China by private traders, creating a growing demand among the Chinese population. The trade formed a lucrative triangle. Indian opium flowed into China, Chinese silver flowed back to Britain, and British manufactured goods and weaponry were sold globally. This triangle trade was devastating for China. By the early 19th century, millions of Chinese people were addicted to opium, leading to social and economic decline. The Qing government, recognizing the harm caused by opium, attempted to ban its trade. In 1839, Imperial Commissioner Lin Zexu famously confiscated and destroyed large quantities of British opium in Canton. This act of defiance led directly to the First Opium War. As Britain retaliated to protect its commercial interests, the war ended in 1842 with the Treaty of Nanking, which ceded Hong Kong Island to Britain. What had started as a devastating trade practice had now reshaped the political and economic landscape of the region. The Opium Triangle trade remains a powerful reminder of the lengths imperial powers went to for profit, often at the expense of entire societies. As we reflect on this chapter, consider how the ripple effects of this trade influence not only Hong Kong's history, but the global order as a whole. The Second Opium War, fought between 1856 and 1860, was rooted in Britain and France's desire to expand their trade privileges and influence in China. Following the First Opium War, tensions between the Qing dynasty and foreign powers remained high. Britain's dissatisfaction with the Treaty of Nanking led to renewed conflict as they sought to remove restrictions on trade, secure access to inland markets, and legalize the opium trade. The war began in 1856, triggered by the Arrow Incident, in which Chinese authorities seized a ship flying the British flag. Britain, joined by France, used this as a pretext to escalate hostilities. The conflict saw battles along the Pearl River and the capture of strategic ports. Culminating in the occupation of Beijing by British and French forces. The war ended with the Treaty of Tientsin, 1858, and the Convention of Peking, 1860, which further eroded China's sovereignty. Under these agreements, Britain gained the Kowloon Peninsula and Stonecutters Island, providing much-needed land for Hong Kong's growth. France and Russia also secured territorial and trade concessions, but Britain's ambitions didn't stop there. By the late 19th century, the small area of Hong Kong Island and Kowloon proved insufficient for a growing population and strategic defense. In 1898, Britain negotiated the Second Convention of Peking, which granted it a 99-year lease over the new territories, a vast expanse of land and 365 surrounding islands. The new territories were crucial for Hong Kong's development. They provided agricultural land, space for industry, and opportunities for urban expansion. Though technically a lease, the agreement allowed Britain to govern the new territories as part of its colony, with little interference from the Qing government. However, the lease created a long-term geopolitical challenge. By the 20th century, the integration of Hong Kong Island, Kowloon, and the new territories made it impractical to separate them. As the lease expiration approached in 1997, questions arose about the future of the entire colony. As Hong Kong moved into the 20th century, the colony's trajectory seemed unstoppable. The city's bustling harbor was teeming with ships from around the world, and its growing population reflected its status as a vital hub of trade and migration. However, the events of this era, both local and global, would test Hong Kong's resilience like never before. By the 1900s, Hong Kong had firmly established itself as one of Asia's leading ports. The completion of the Kowloon-Canton Railway in 1910 further connected the city to mainland China, boosting trade and migration. The economy thrived, with industries like shipbuilding, textiles, and finance growing rapidly. But this growth came with challenges. The 1920s and 30s were marked by labor unrest, as workers protested against poor wages and harsh conditions. The 1925 to 1926 Canton-Hong Kong strike, one of the largest labor movements in Chinese history, crippled the colony for nearly 2 years. The strike highlighted the growing tensions between the working class and colonial authorities, as well as the influence of political movements sweeping through China. Hong Kong also became a refuge during this time. As political turmoil and civil war engulfed mainland China, thousands fled to the colony seeking safety and opportunity. The city's population swelled, creating new opportunities but also straining its resources. As the 1930s progressed, tensions in East Asia escalated. Japan's imperial ambitions were evident with its invasion of Manchuria in 1931 and the full-scale invasion of China in 1937. Hong Kong, a British colony on the doorstep of Japanese-occupied territories, found itself in a precarious position. The colony became a critical supply base for Chinese resistance forces, with British authorities covertly aiding the nationalist government. However, this support put Hong Kong in Japan's crosshairs. By the late 1930s, fears of an invasion grew, and preparations for war intensified. Air raid shelters were constructed, and fortifications on Hong Kong Island and Kowloon were reinforced. On December 8, 1941, just hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces launched an invasion of Hong Kong. The attack was swift and brutal. Within days, Japanese troops overran the new territories and crossed into Kowloon, forcing British and Canadian defenders to retreat to Hong Kong Island. The Battle of Hong Kong was fierce, but ultimately one-sided. The defenders, vastly outnumbered and outgunned, held out for 17 days before surrendering on Christmas Day, now remembered as Black Christmas. The fall of Hong Kong marked the beginning of nearly 4 years of Japanese occupation. The occupation was a dark chapter in Hong Kong's history. The city's population, which had peaked at 1.6 million before the war, plummeted to around 600,000 due to executions, forced labor, starvation, and deportations. The Japanese imposed strict controls on daily life. Food and medicine were scarce, and residents were subjected to brutal treatment. Public executions were used to instill fear, and many were forced into hard labor or conscripted into Japanese war efforts. Despite the hardships, acts of resistance emerged. Underground groups worked to sabotage Japanese operations, and secret networks helped smuggle information to Allied forces. These acts of defiance, though small, were a testament to the resilience of Hong Kong's people. On August 15, 1945, Japan announced its surrender, ending World War II. British forces returned to Hong Kong shortly after, re-establishing colonial rule. The city lay in ruins, its economy shattered, infrastructure devastated, and population traumatized. The events of the early 20th century and World War II shaped Hong Kong in profound ways. The city endured immense hardship but emerged stronger, its people showing extraordinary resilience and determination. As we look back on this chapter, consider the lessons it offers about unity, perseverance, and the human capacity to rebuild. What might Hong Kong's story during this era teach us about navigating challenges in our own time? The end of World War II marked a new chapter for Hong Kong. The city, battered and broken by years of Japanese occupation, faced the monumental task of rebuilding itself. This challenge was met with an influx of people, a surge of refugees fleeing the chaos of mainland China. The Chinese Civil War, raging from 1945 to 1949, brought waves of migrants to Hong Kong's shores. As the Communist Party emerged victorious in 1949, even more families and individuals crossed the border, seeking safety and opportunity in the British colony. By the early 1950s, Hong Kong's population had swelled dramatically, reaching over 2 million. Recognizing the need to support this growing population, the British administration launched ambitious initiatives to modernize Hong Kong's infrastructure and social services. Housing was a priority. The construction of resettlement estates provided homes for thousands of families, transforming barren hillsides into vibrant neighborhoods. Transportation networks were expanded to connect these new communities with the urban centers. The construction of roads, bridges, and ferry terminals facilitated the movement of goods and people, while investments in public utilities like water, electricity, and sanitation improved living conditions. Hong Kong's industrial transformation began in the late 1940s, driven by necessity and ingenuity. Small workshops that had once produced goods for local consumption began to scale up. By the 1950s, textiles, plastics, electronics, and toy manufacturing had become key pillars of the economy. Refugees played a critical role in this industrial boom. Many brought with them expertise in manufacturing and access to trade networks in mainland China and Southeast Asia. Entrepreneurs established export-oriented businesses, capitalizing on Hong Kong's strategic location and deepwater harbor. The city's reputation as a center of commerce and innovation grew rapidly. By the 1960s, Hong Kong was known as the factory of the world, producing goods that reached markets across Europe, North America, and beyond. The city's recovery during this period laid the foundation for its later rise as a global financial center. The entrepreneurial spirit of its people, combined with strategic investments in infrastructure and education, turned Hong Kong into a beacon of hope and opportunity in Asia. By the mid-20th century, Hong Kong found itself at a crossroads. With an influx of refugees from mainland China and limited space, the city faced an unprecedented challenge: how to house and support this growing population. Among the most iconic solutions, though unconventional, was the Kowloon Walled City. This densely packed area, measuring just a few acres, became home to over 30,000 people. Originally a military fort, the walled city was left in a legal gray zone after World War II. As refugees poured in, it transformed into an unregulated settlement, a hive of activity, commerce, and ingenuity. Life inside the walled city was chaotic, yet vibrant. Narrow alleyways were illuminated by makeshift lights. Businesses thrived in tiny spaces, and families lived stacked upon one another. It became a self-contained ecosystem with its own informal rules. Despite its reputation for lawlessness, many residents described it as a place of community and survival. However, by the 1980s, the government decided that the walled city had outlived its purpose. In the early 1990s, it was demolished and replaced with the Kowloon Walled City Park, a serene space that honors the site's complex history. In the 20th century, few individuals left as profound an impact on global culture as Bruce Lee. Born in San Francisco in 1940 to Hong Kong parents, Lee spent much of his childhood in Hong Kong, where his journey into martial arts and acting began. From a young age, Lee was immersed in the vibrant yet turbulent streets of Hong Kong, which shaped his outlook on life. In the 1960s, Lee moved to the United States, where he studied philosophy and began to develop his own martial arts philosophy, which he called Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. But it was his return to Hong Kong in the early 1970s that cemented his status as a legend. Films like The Big Boss, 1971, Fist of Fury, 1972, and Enter the Dragon, 1973, not only captivated audiences, but also elevated Hong Kong cinema to the international stage. These films were more than action-packed spectacles. They were cultural statements, showcasing themes of justice, resistance, and the strength of the underdog. For Hong Kongers, Lee's characters symbolized resilience and pride, a reflection of the city's spirit. Bruce Lee's impact went far beyond cinema. He shattered stereotypes about Asians in Hollywood, paving the way for future generations of actors and filmmakers. He also redefined martial arts, introducing it as a form of self-discipline, personal growth, and artistry to millions around the world. Today, Bruce Lee remains a cultural icon. His image adorns murals and statues across Hong Kong, and his philosophies continue to inspire martial artists, filmmakers, and thinkers globally. But his legacy is not just about what he achieved, it's about what he stood for. Bruce Lee embodied the idea that barriers, whether cultural, physical, or ideological, are meant to be overcome. His words resonate as strongly today as they did decades ago. Be water, my friend. Does Bruce Lee inspire you? Is it his mastery of martial arts, his philosophy, or his ability to break down barriers? Share your thoughts with us. Recognizing the need for a larger and more modern airport, the Hong Kong government began planning a new facility in the 1980s. After years of debate and preparation, construction began on Chek Lap Kok Airport, located on an artificial island off Lantau Island. While plans for the new airport were underway, Kai Tak continued to serve as Hong Kong's lifeline to the world. It remained a beloved institution. With its unique location and challenging landings cementing its place in aviation history. On July 6, 1998, Kai Tak Airport handled its last commercial flight. The emotional farewell was marked by a mixture of nostalgia and excitement as Hong Kong transitioned to its new airport at Chek Lap Kok. The final flight, a Cathay Pacific Boeing 747, departed Kai Tak and landed at the new Hong Kong International Airport, symbolizing the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter. Today, the site of Kai Tak Airport has been transformed into the Kai Tak development, featuring residential complexes, parks, and a cruise terminal. The checkerboard used for the famous landing approach remains a nostalgic landmark visible from Kowloon City. For aviation enthusiasts and longtime residents of Hong Kong, Kai Tak remains an enduring symbol of the city's spirit. It represented Hong Kong's rise as a global hub and its ability to adapt to challenges with innovation and determination. The story of Kai Tak Airport is more than just a history of planes and runways. It's a story of how a small airfield grew to become an integral part of Hong Kong's identity, connecting the city to the world and leaving a legacy that continues to inspire. The handover of Hong Kong on July 1, 1997, was more than a transfer of sovereignty. It was a profound moment in global history. After 156 years of British rule, Hong Kong was returned to China under an agreement that promised to preserve the city's way of life, setting a precedent for governance and diplomacy in the modern era. The seeds of the handover were planted decades earlier, with the realization that the 99-year lease of the new territories, agreed upon in 1898, would expire in 1997. By the 1980s, it was clear that Britain could not retain Hong Kong Island and Kowloon without the new territories, as the three regions were deeply interconnected economically and socially. negotiations between Britain and China began in earnest, culminating in the 1984 Sino-British Joint Declaration. This landmark agreement established that Hong Kong would return to Chinese sovereignty in 1997, but under the principle of one country, two systems. This framework, devised by Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping, promised that Hong Kong would retain its legal, economic, and social systems for 50 years, ensuring a high degree of autonomy. It was a bold and innovative solution, aiming to reconcile two vastly different political systems, capitalist Hong Kong and socialist mainland China, under one national identity. The years leading up to 1997 were marked by both anticipation and uncertainty. While some Hong Kongers welcomed the handover as a long overdue reunion with the mainland, others feared the erosion of their freedoms and way of life. Mass emigration became a defining feature of this period, as tens of thousands of families sought new opportunities abroad, in countries like Canada, Australia, and the United States. Despite this exodus, many also chose to stay, confident in Hong Kong's resilience and future prospects. The British administration, under Governor Chris Patten, worked to strengthen Hong Kong's institutions during its final years of rule. Patten introduced democratic reforms, expanding voting rights and increasing public participation in governance. These measures were controversial, with Beijing viewing them as an attempt to complicate the transition. Meanwhile, infrastructure projects like the construction of the new Czech Lapcock Airport symbolized Hong Kong's ambitions for the future. The city was preparing not only for a change in sovereignty, but for its continued role as a global financial hub. On the night of June 30th, 1997, the world watched as the handover ceremony unfolded at the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Center. The event was a carefully orchestrated blend of British formality and Chinese symbolism, reflecting the gravity of the occasion. As the clock struck midnight, the Union Jack was lowered and the Chinese flag was raised, marking the end of British colonial rule and the beginning of a new chapter under Chinese sovereignty. Prince Charles, representing Britain, and Chinese President Jiang Zemin delivered speeches that emphasized hope, continuity, and cooperation. For many, the ceremony was a moment of pride and optimism, a peaceful transition of power that respected Hong Kong's unique identity. For others, it was a poignant reminder of the uncertainties that lay ahead. The 1997 handover was a historic moment, not only for Hong Kong, but for the world. It was an unprecedented experiment in governance, blending two vastly different systems under one national identity. In the initial years after the handover, the one country, two systems principle seemed to work as intended. Hong Kong continued to thrive as a financial center, maintaining its free market economy, independent judiciary, and vibrant civil society. The Basic Law, Hong Kong's mini-constitution, safeguarded freedoms such as freedom of speech, assembly, and the press. The city's role as a gateway between China and the world grew even stronger, with foreign investment pouring in and new industries emerging. However, tensions began to surface as early as the 2000s. Efforts by the Hong Kong government to implement national security legislation under Article 23 of the Basic Law in 2003 sparked massive protests, with 500,000 people taking to the streets. This was the first major indication that the people of Hong Kong were deeply invested in preserving their freedoms and autonomy. As the years went on, the relationship between Hong Kong and Beijing became increasingly complex. The city's integration with mainland China brought economic benefits, but also political challenges. Beijing's influence over Hong Kong's governance grew, leading to concerns about the erosion of the high degree of autonomy promised under the Joint Declaration. The 2014 Umbrella Movement, a massive pro-democracy protest, thousands of citizens demanded greater democratic rights. The situation reached a boiling point in 2019, with massive protests against a proposed extradition bill. These demonstrations evolved into a broader pro-democracy movement, reflecting deep-seated concerns about Hong Kong's future. In 2020, the introduction of the National Security Law brought sweeping changes, criminalizing acts of secession, subversion, terrorism, and collusion with foreign forces. Critics argue that this law has significantly curtailed freedoms and autonomy, while the government insists it is necessary for stability. Through all of this, Hong Kong's people have shown incredible resilience. The city remains a hub of innovation, creativity, and financial power, even as it navigates these challenges. How do you see the relationship between Hong Kong and China evolving? Can the one country, two systems model survive, or is it destined to fade? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Today, Hong Kong stands as one of the world's most dynamic cities. Its skyline is a testament to its ambition, while its economy continues to rank among the most competitive globally. But beneath this prosperity lie questions about the city's future. Economically, Hong Kong remains a vital gateway between China and the world. Its financial markets are among the largest and most active globally, and it has positioned itself as a leader in fintech and innovation. However, the city faces increasing competition from regional rivals like Shanghai and Singapore. Socially, Hong Kong is at a crossroads. Generational divides are evident, with younger residents often advocating for greater freedoms and reforms, while older generations focus on stability and economic progress. Housing remains a pressing issue, with skyrocketing property prices making it one of the least affordable cities in the world. Culturally, Hong Kong continues to innovate. From contemporary art to avant-garde theater, the city's creative industries are thriving. Its international film festival and emerging digital media hubs are evidence of a city that values both tradition and modernity. But what of its future? The year 2047 looms large. This date marks the end of the 50-year autonomy promised under the Sino-British Joint Declaration. Will Hong Kong retain its distinctiveness, or will it be fully integrated into China's political and economic systems? The answers to these questions will shape not only Hong Kong, but also its role in the global order. Can it continue to balance its rich history with the demands of an ever-changing world? As we come to the end of our journey through the extraordinary history of Hong Kong, we are left with a story that is as complex as it is inspiring. A tale of resilience, reinvention, and enduring spirit. Hong Kong has always been a place of contrasts, from the ancient fishing villages that dotted its shores to the neon-lit skyscrapers that define its modern skyline. It has balanced tradition and innovation, Eastern heritage and Western influence, adversity and ambition. History has shown us that Hong Kong is no stranger to challenges. Whether it was the hardships of British colonial rule, the devastation of World War II, or the uncertainties of the 1997 handover, this city has faced each trial with determination and emerged stronger. The resilience of Hong Kong's people is at the heart of its story. They have transformed a small island into a global financial powerhouse, nurtured a rich cultural identity, and stood firm in the face of political and social upheaval. Each chapter of this journey, from the Opium Wars to the rise of industry, from the Cultural Renaissance to modern challenges, offers us insights into the strength and adaptability of this unique city. As Hong Kong approaches 2047, the year when the one country, two systems framework is set to expire, the city once again stands at a crossroads. Questions about autonomy, identity, and integration loom large. But history gives us reason to be hopeful. Hong Kong's legacy is one of transformation. Its ability to reinvent itself time and again has been its greatest strength. If the past is any indication, the city will continue to evolve, finding new ways to thrive while holding on to the spirit that makes it uniquely Hong Kong. Before we part, I want to take a moment to reflect on something personal. Earlier, I mentioned the feedback from our community, especially Haka's thoughtful critique of my narration. This time, I made a conscious effort to slow down, to give each moment and detail the time it deserved. So, how did I do? Did the pace feel right? Was my explanation of these complex and often challenging historical events clear and engaging? Your feedback means the world to me. So please let me know in the comments if this approach worked better for you. What part of Hong Kong's story resonated most with you? What lessons do you think the world can learn from this incredible city? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspectives. History, after all, is not just a collection of events. It's a dialogue, a living narrative that we all contribute to. By reflecting on the past, we can better understand the present and shape the future. Thank you for joining me, Phileas Kronos, on this journey through time. Your feedback, support, and curiosity make these explorations possible. If you've enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Timeless Tales. And one last thing, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode of our historical adventures. Until next time, fellow time travelers, stay curious, keep exploring, and never stop seeking the stories that make our world so endlessly fascinating.